Iranian leadership says President Trump's latest sanctions permanently end any chance of diplomacy between the two countries. On Monday, President Trump announced sanctions targeting Iran's supreme leader and his office, placing restrictions on their access to financial resources. He hopes the sanctions will force Iran to come to the negotiating table and halt their nuclear program. In a televised speech earlier, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani called the sanctions outrageous and stupid. President Trump fired back on Twitter today, writing, quote, Iran's very ignorant and insulting statement put out today only shows that they do not understand reality. Any attack by Iran on anything American will be met with great and overwhelming force. In some areas, overwhelming will mean obliteration. No more John Kerry and Obama. This back and forth comes after the Iranian military shot down an unmanned U.S. drone last week and threatened to attack more drones. The U.S. has also blamed Iran for trying to sabotage oil tankers in the region. Joining me now from Arlington, Virginia, is Politico White House correspondent Nancy Cook and CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill as well. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me. Nancy Cook, let's start with this. The president issues sanctions after deciding against a military strike, but is now threatening military actions in Iran if it attacks U.S. interests. So what line is he now trying to walk here?
Well, I think the president is trying to appear really tough, and we've always seen the president is very reactive to other world leader statements and also media coverage. And so I think the statement by the Iranian leader definitely made him want to talk tough and tweet out that, the U.S., he was not John Kerry, he was not Obama, he was going to take a tough stance towards Iran. But the fact of the matter is the president has been very unwilling and worried about engaging in military conflict. And he has even since the campaign. He really painted himself as much more of an isolationist candidate when it came to foreign policy, who did not want to get the U.S. involved in any sort of conflict or even strikes that could escalate into a conflict. And so I think he loves the tough talk, but at the end of the day, he is very wary of provoking another country.
Nancy Cordes, in an interview with The Hill, the president said he doesn't need congressional approval to order a strike on Iran. Let's first listen to what he had to say.
I like the idea of keeping Congress abreast, but I wouldn't have to do that.
Sure. Nancy Pelosi actually said you must have congressional approval. So you disagree with her on that?
I disagree. I think most people seem to disagree, but I do like keeping them. They have ideas. They're intelligent people. They'll come up with some thoughts. I actually learned a couple of things the other day when we had our meeting with Congress, which were, I think, helpful to me. But I do like keeping them abreast, but I don't have to do it legally.
All right, so how is that segment going over with lawmakers, Nancy Cordes?
Well, Republicans are giving him a wide berth right now, but Democrats certainly disagree. They see the president and his administration laying the groundwork for a case that because Iran is connected to al-Qaeda, that the White House has the authority under law to attack in a prolonged way without getting approval from Congress. Lawmakers on the left say that is simply not the case. They argue that the connections between Iran and al-Qaeda are tenuous, that the two have actually been at odds for more than a decade, and they say that al-Qaeda is not the main actor here. So the White House cannot find sanctuary within that law that says that a White House can go after terrorist groups like al-Qaeda abroad without getting congressional approval. But all this might be moot. The lawmakers here on the Hill simply don't know what the White House strategy is and whether the White House will pursue an aggressive strategy here, because they saw the president look like he was leaning in that direction last week and then pull back.
So another major topic is immigration. Let's go ahead and turn and talk about that. The House is set to vote on a $4.5 billion bill that would provide aid to migrants at the U.S. border. But Nancy Cordes, some Democrats like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez not on board with this. What were their concerns, and what's the status of the bill now?
Well, there are some Democrats who say, look, if you're opening up the issue of immigration, there are a lot of things that need to be done, and they believe that there should be stronger measures in place to, for example, protect the Dreamers or prevent the administration from being able to separate families as it did in the past. But this is a bill, a $4.5 billion bill, that was agreed upon by Democrats and Republicans in the Senate before it came to the House. And Democratic leadership leadership in the House is very keen to pass it. And so you had the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, making a very aggressive case to her own members this morning behind closed doors, telling them, look, this is not an immigration bill. We're not going to be throwing every pet immigration policy that we care about into this bill. This is an appropriations bill, by which she means that there is money that is about to run out to take care of unaccompanied minors, in particular, who are in custody at the border and are being, in her words, treated inhumanely. She said this is a spending bill, plain and simple. So don't think about what isn't in it that you'd like to see in there. Think about what is in there, money to help these kids and these families. The challenge now is that Democrats in the House, even though they like the bill, they think it could be made a little better. She wants to make some changes to the bill, which could create some hiccups on the Senate side if Republicans don't agree to what House Democrats want to do.
And you know, Nancy Cook, you're hearing what Nancy has just said, and the White House has signaled opposition to this bill already. So what would they like to see included that's not already in the measure?
Well, I think that the White House wants this bill to appear as tough on immigration as possible. This has been a very key talking point for Trump heading into 2020. This idea that he is tough on border security, that he's building the wall. And so those are the optics that they want to project with every opportunity they get with immigration. But as Nancy Cordes said, you know, the Democrats, House Democrats really want to take this opportunity, you know, to revisit the idea of immigration, particularly given all of the negative news reports about facilities at the border and how children are being held. You know, there is real backlash potentially for the White House in that, because it makes the Trump administration, you know, look a little heartless. And I think that we're seeing that backlash now.
And Nancy Cook, you know, you have that article, reading it, out today, reporting that President Trump is tiring of his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. What can you tell us about their relationship?
Well, I've been told, you know, the last several weeks that the president has just grown increasingly frustrated with Mulvaney, that he is snapping at him more. You know, he's sort of asking him, why are you there in meetings? He's been asking people in the Trump orbit and around the White House what they think of Mulvaney's leadership style, what do they think that he's adding to the job. And, you know, one White House official sort of put it best to me when he said, you know, this is inevitable. This happens with every chief of staff. I think Mulvaney has been out there trying to paint the picture that, you know, he is someone who has solved the problem of how to be Trump's chief of staff, and he's done a much better job than his predecessors like John Kelly and Reince Priebus. But the fact of the matter is that President Trump is tiring of him. I will say that there's a caveat there, is that Trump has no inclination to fire him. That is not on the table. Trump does not want to have to look for a fourth chief of staff now. And so what I think is happening now is Trump is getting snippy with him, and that we may see Mulvaney marginalized a little bit in the coming months.
We talk about change of command, and usually it happens, we see a tweet and we know of any changes. We also understand that we have seen a replacement for outgoing White House press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. First, we had Lady Melania Trump announcing that her press secretary Stephanie Grisham will take over the job. Nancy Cook, was this expected?
It was expected. I think that we were wondering why it hadn't happened already. You know, there were a bunch of names floated as soon as Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or the president actually announced that Sarah was stepping down. And Steph Grisham was always the front runner. And so I think there was a question about why she hadn't been named. So then we saw Melania announcing it today. You know, she is one of the last few people in the White House who has been there since the campaign. She has a pretty good relationship behind the scenes with reporters, many of whom she knows from the campaign. And more importantly, she really has the trust of the First Lady and the President. They view her as loyal, which is key. And so much of this job is not a traditional press secretary job. It's basically managing the interactions that the President has directly with the press, either in the Oval Office or when he's leaving to go to trips. And I think that they see her as someone that can continue to do that, and most importantly, be loyal to the family, which is such a key criteria for a top staff job in this White House.
Nancy Cook and Nancy Cordes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.